may not realize it yet, but your mind is already busy making choices you haven't decided on. A few seconds from now, you'll feel yourself settling into this video, choosing to stay, choosing to listen, choosing to relax. But deep inside your brain, that choice has already been made, long before your awareness catches up. Neurons fire, patterns unfold, and a decision blossoms in silence. It feels like you are in control, but the truth is stranger. The mind often acts first and explains itself later. And that's only the beginning. Right now, as your eyes move across the screen, your mind is quietly filling in gaps you can't detect. Every single person watching this has a hole in their vision where the optic nerve leaves the eye. An empty space so large that an entire object can vanish inside it. Yet you never see the hole. You see a seamless world. Your brain paints over the absence automatically, like an invisible editor rewriting a scene before you ever know it was missing. Even your sense of time bends and warps. A moment of fear can stretch a second into forever. A moment of joy can make entire evenings slip past in a soft blur. And when déjà vu strikes, when a moment feels eerily familiar, it isn't a window into a past life or a glitch in the simulation. It's a tiny misfire in the brain's recognition system, a mistaken signal that feels truer than memory itself. Because what comes next is even stranger. Your emotions don't just color your thoughts. They literally change what you see. Anxiety can darken shadows and tighten your visual field. Calm can warm the colors of the world until they glow a little softer. And beneath all of this, your brain is predicting what will happen next, half a second before the world actually does it. You're not experiencing raw reality. You're experiencing your brain's best guess, a controlled hallucination that usually matches the truth, but not always. Tonight, we'll walk through these illusions, decision-making before awareness, time that bends, memories that rewrite themselves, emotions that sculpt perception, and the hidden machinery that keeps everything running without a sound. It might feel unsettling at first, realizing how much of your world is shaped behind the scenes. But by the end, you'll understand why these illusions exist and why they're not flaws at all, but elegant solutions designed to help you navigate a world far more complex than consciousness alone could handle. So settle in, let your thoughts loosen a little, and let the quiet mystery of your own mind rise gently to the surface. And while we drift here, right at the edge of all this strangeness, this is usually where I like to soften things for a moment. If journeys like this, quiet, curious, a little mysterious, help your evenings feel calmer or your world feel a little wider, I'd be genuinely grateful if you'd consider subscribing. And if something in this story resonates with you, even for just a second, a like or a comment helps more people find their way into this calm little space we're building together. No pressure at all, just something gentle if you ever feel like it. Your hand is already moving. You're halfway to the door before the reason arrives, or you've smiled at a warm, familiar scent, a heartbeat, before the label vanilla or old books clicks into place. The action comes first. The story of why comes later. It feels subtle, harmless, almost ordinary. And it is, but it also hints at something larger going on beneath awareness. Consciousness feels like the starting line for thought. We sense a desire, weigh options, decide, and then act. But the order is often reversed. Neural processes begin out of sight, gather strength, and then present the outcome to consciousness as if it were the author. Your awareness becomes the final stage of a long sequence that started without you noticing. It's tidy, efficient, and slightly misleading, because it keeps the mess of intermediate steps off your mental desk. Evidence for this sequence shows up when we look closely at timing. In classic experiments, brain signals that forecast a choice rise before people report wanting to move. The readiness potential builds several hundred milliseconds before a finger lifts, while the person still feels like they're considering it. Other studies push that lead time even further, with activity patterns in frontal and parietal areas, hinting at an upcoming decision seconds before people say they chose. The mind appears to prepare in quiet, then taps awareness to narrate. That delay sounds abstract until you meet it in daily life. A pianist's fingers sometimes settle on the right chord without conscious planning, especially in a familiar progression. A driver eases off the accelerator and moves toward the brake before the hazard is fully recognized. A shadow at the edge of vision, a shift in brake lights, a pattern that doesn't feel right. In conversation, you're already turning toward a voice before you've placed who it is. The body moves on incomplete information, guided by systems tuned to patterns that repeat. Those patterns come from a brain that predicts constantly. It learns the cadence of footsteps on your staircase and expects the next one. It forecasts the rhythm of a sentence and prepares your response before the last word lands. It fills in what likely happens after the clink of glass or the creak of a chair. These forecasts run in parallel with incoming data, adjusting when there's a mismatch. The result is speed, reactions that feel immediate because the groundwork was laid just before the moment arrived. To manage all this, the brain filters. Most of what hits your senses never crosses into awareness. Hum fades into nothing, distant traffic dissolves, and the faint buzz of electronics disappears. The system labels them irrelevant and saves bandwidth for what matters. And yet, the filter is porous when it needs to be. Your name cuts through a busy room. A breaking glass tone jumps to the front of the line. The machinery below keeps scanning, ready to surface what matters. We call some of this intuition, and it often feels like a mystery signal from nowhere. But it's the product of hidden processing. Your brain picks up small changes in room tension. Voices drop a little, shoulders drop or lift, gaze patterns shift. You notice micro-expressions you can't describe later. You register a draft that hints at an open door behind you. All of it routes through specialized circuits that gauge risk, opportunity, and social meaning. When enough small cues align, you feel a gut pull. Go, wait, speak, stop. Consciousness receives a verdict without the case file. The hidden chain also shows up in the timing of will. Some work suggests the brain's readiness signal may reflect the accumulation of neural noise building toward a threshold, rather than a clean line from intention to action. When that buildup crosses a line, movement follows. People still report the moment of choosing, but that timestamp can shift. If you play a tone after an action, reported intention moves to align with the feedback. It's as if the brain backfills the narrative of when you decided, stitching the sequence into a smoother story. None of this erases control. You can veto. There's a brief window to halt a prepared action, especially for simple movements. That last moment cancellation matters in daily life. You start to reply with a sharp comment, and something holds it back. Your foot begins to step off the curb, then stops. Conscious veto acts like a safety catch over processes that are fast by design. Consider how this plays out in movement. Walking looks simple. It isn't. Your body makes constant micro-corrections to keep balance, adjusts stride length to surface friction, computes foot placement over uneven edges, and keeps head position steady to stabilize the visual field. These adjustments occur through spinal and cerebellar systems that track error and update on the fly. You don't narrate ankle angle or calf activation. You just move, and the machinery handles the chaos of the world under your feet. The same thing happens in conversation. You time your interjections to the other person's breathing. You mirror their pace without thinking. You start nodding during a pause to signal turn taking. Prosody shifts. Rising tones, falling phrases, predict the end of a sentence so you can jump in without overlap. Your auditory system anticipates syllables based on context, then corrects if a word breaks expectation. If the rhythm of speech glitches, a lag in a call, a delayed audio feed. You feel the strain because prediction is failing and repair costs attention. Filtering keeps you sane here, too. If your brain surfaced every micro change in posture and tone, you'd overload in seconds. Instead, it compresses the scene into a manageable summary and only flags deviations, an unexpected word, a sudden silence, a cough in the wrong place. Those flags are prediction errors. They demand updates. You notice them because they mean your model needs a fix. This is why some situations feel instantly off. Enter a room and the noise level is wrong for a library photo on the wall. Your mind quiets your voice without a rule book. See a subtle sign of stress, fast blinking, tight jaw, and you grow cautious before you can say why. Smell citrus and you straighten napkins on a table. The cues are small, but they plug into learned scripts. The scripts run automatically. Speed matters for safety. The brain buys speed with guesswork. It sets up likely futures, then uses incoming data to accept or revise. When the stakes are high, this advantage becomes obvious. On a bike, your grip tightens on gravel before you label the shift in traction. In a kitchen, your hand pulls back from a pan the moment heat rises, before the thought, "that's too hot," forms. These moments feel clean and obvious because the system is tuned for them and the feedback is clear. You acted in time. But prediction sometimes gets ahead of itself. You mishear a word that fits the sentence and only notice when the next word clashes. You reach for your phone at a buzz that didn't happen because your brain expected it. You step to the left when someone moves right because your model ran a common pattern. Error is the cost of speed. The system accepts small misses to prevent big delays. Viewed this way, awareness receives a curated feed. It gets the headline, not the raw feed. It helps with planning, course correction, and social negotiation, but it isn't typing every command. That role belongs to layers of machinery, honed to keep you alive and efficient. If anything, the design protects you. It shelters you from noise and gives you a workable picture of the world, plus a lever to intervene when it matters. There's a comfort in this. You don't need to calculate each step of a staircase, translate every micro cue of a friend's face, or consciously modulate every breath during a tense moment. Your brain owns those tasks. It keeps a quiet watch, pushes likely actions forward, and only asks for your input when the decision tree branches in a meaningful way or when a prepared act ought to be stopped. This division of labor is why you can hold a thought while making coffee, why you can drive and still hear your name in a song, why you can hold a child and sway in rhythm without ever counting. Still, there's a question that lingers. If awareness comes late to the party, what exactly is it seeing? The content that reaches consciousness has already been filtered, predicted, and stitched into coherence. Colors are balanced against context. Sounds are aligned with lips. Movements are smoothed. Even the sense of when you decided can be nudged by feedback. What you experience as the present moment is a constructed scene that hides the edits. That scene is useful. It gives you stability. It spares you the churn of raw data. And because the system runs on predictions, your inner state shapes what you're presented with. Expect a friend and you'll spot them faster. Prepare for an argument and neutral words sound sharp. Preparedness isn't neutral. It bends perception toward what it deems likely or important. So the brain acts before you do not to trick you, but to serve you. It forecasts to save time, filters to save bandwidth, and practices to reduce risk. It hands you a summary and invites you to steer when necessary. You get veto power, long-term planning, and social nuance. The machinery underneath handles the grind. If that's true, then the next step is obvious. If your decisions, reactions, and even your sense of timing arrive pre-edited, what is awareness actually looking at when it wakes up to the moment? And if the feed it receives is curated, how closely does it match the world outside your skin? Hold your thumb out at arm's length. That space your thumb covers is smaller than the hole in your vision that you carry all the time. It sits where the optic nerve leaves the eye, a blank that should interrupt every scene you look at. You never notice it. The brain fills it in with whatever it expects should be there: the texture of a wall, the continuation of a line, the rest of a face, so smoothly that the absence never arrives in awareness. This quiet paint-over is not a rare trick. It is routine. The mind does not wait for the world to present a complete picture. It completes the picture on your behalf. That's because the mind doesn't act like a lens. It behaves like an editor on deadline. Incoming signals are messy and partial. The editor forecasts what the next frame should contain, smooths the joins, and replaces missing footage with plausible content. Even before an image hits awareness, assumptions run ahead of it. A shadow is interpreted as depth. A color is adjusted by the light around it. The world you experience is not a raw recording. It is a best-guess reconstruction optimized for speed and usefulness. This is why two people can stand in the same room and not quite see the same place. Internal states shift the editor's settings. Anxiety tightens the focus and darkens edges, pulling attention toward potential threats. Depression drains richness from the scene, muting contrast so everything feels farther away. Joy widens the searchlight, heightening clarity and bringing more detail into view. The external world doesn't change between glances. The internal calibrations do, and perception follows. You can watch those calibrations at work in illusions that turn simple patterns into moving scenes. A grid of static lines seems to shimmer. An image built from still frames pulses with motion that isn't there. What's happening is not eye failure, but efficient prediction. The brain expects movement along certain paths, so it adds it. Colors refuse to stay put as well. A gray square looks lighter or darker based on what surrounds it, because color is a computed signal, not a fixed property. Put the same hue against blue, then against orange, and your experience of it changes. Even straight lines betray you. Tilt their neighbors, and the line appears to bend. The visual system cares about relationships more than absolutes, and that priority keeps you functional in complex scenes, but leaves you open to neat tricks. You can also catch the system stitching senses together. Watch a ventriloquist's puppet talk while the performer speaks, and the words seem to come from the puppet's mouth. Your brain resolves the conflict by assigning sound to the more reliable cue in that moment, the moving lips it can see. Delay the audio while watching a person speak, and lip sync falls apart, yet after a short while, your brain partially compensates, shifting perceived timing to reduce the mismatch. The goal is not perfect fidelity. It is a single, coherent story. The editor tolerates small errors to maintain one smooth narrative. Even the act of looking is edited. Your eyes jump several times each second in rapid saccades. During those jumps, the world would blur. You do not see that blur. The brain suppresses or masks the input during the movement and stitches the before and after into a continuous scene. You experience a stable room, a readable page, a steady horizon, while underneath, the sensor is darting around. The system hides the scaffolding so the finished image feels still. The same timing issues can make a moment feel oddly familiar. Déjà vu is not a message from beyond. It is a brief slip in the synchrony between recognition systems. A feeling of familiarity lands before the context that normally accompanies it, so the current scene gets tagged as remembered. The result is a false stamp of already seen applied to a new event. It is a reminder that perception depends on timing as much as content. When signals arrive out of order, experience reorganizes around the glitch. Beneath all this runs a predictive engine. The mind does not wait for the world. It projects a fraction of a second forward, then checks incoming data against that forecast. When the prediction fits, you feel the world is stable and continuous. When it fails badly, when a person you didn't expect steps into view, when a sound erupts in quiet. The prediction is updated and attention reorients. Most of the time, this dance is invisible. You notice it only at the edges, when an illusion exposes a shortcut or a surprise forces a reset. Think about how much has to go right for a simple scene to feel ordinary. Light hits the retina, signals cross the optic nerve, features are extracted, motion is inferred, edges are found, colors are computed relative to surrounding light, depth is estimated from disparity, and all of that is merged with expectations about what usually sits in places like this. Then time is stabilized, the jumps of the eyes are masked, and sound is aligned with motion. The outcome reaches awareness as a single present moment that feels direct and obvious. The effort remains out of view. Context bends even basic measurements. Place two identical objects against different backgrounds and their sizes appear unequal. Put an object at the horizon and it seems larger than the same object overhead, because the system assumes horizon objects are farther away. Lightness changes according to surrounding brightness, so a surface in shadow can be perceived as lighter than an identically colored surface in glare. None of this is carelessness. It's the brain favoring useful interpretations that normally track the structure of the world. Relative light signals surfaces, background texture signals distance, and consistent motion signals a single moving object. When senses conflict, the brain resolves the dispute by weighting whichever signal has the strongest track record in that context. Sound localization gets pulled toward visual cues because eyes usually pinpoint location better. Timing judgments get adjusted to fit the rhythm of expected causes and effects. Even the sense of touch can be fooled when vision suggests a different source. The story you experience is the negotiated settlement among noisy inputs, guided by prior knowledge and present goals. That negotiation happens fast enough that awareness arrives late to the process. By the time you see, the editor has already filtered, and synchronized. If the brain encounters an unfamiliar pattern, it tests a few interpretations and settles on the one that yields coherent action. You notice indecision only when interpretations swap back and forth, like the face vase image flipping between two readings. Most of the time, the first workable guess holds and experience flows. Because the system is always predicting, you can feel the result as a slight ease when the world behaves as expected and a brief jolt when it doesn't. Walk into a dim room, and your mind preloads what a dim room usually contains. Hear footsteps behind you, and your brain forecasts speed and direction to help decide if you should turn. These projections shave milliseconds off reaction time and reduce the computational load on the conscious workspace. The cost is occasional error when the forecast is wrong. Emotions tune the forecast. A worried brain expects danger at the edges and allocates attention accordingly, amplifying contrasts and narrowing the field. A calm brain expects safety and opens the lens, letting more peripheral detail rise. That's why one person notices every small motion on a quiet street, while another notices the warmth of the light. Both are seeing a constructed scene guided by different internal settings. The more you examine these constructions, the clearer the pattern becomes. The brain keeps you upright in a chaotic sensory storm by insisting on coherence. It erases the blind spot, ties sounds to mouth, irons out eye jumps, and stabilizes the present. It guesses what belongs where and fills with plausible content when the data are thin. The world you experience is constrained by reality, but built by your nervous system's negotiated model of it. With rare exceptions, this model serves you well. It gets you fed, keeps you safe, and lets you read faces and find doors. Notice how this framing changes what seeing the truth means. There is no raw feed waiting to be accessed, no hidden channel that supplies unedited reality. There is a useful construction that reliably tracks the environment and adapts on the fly. It is accurate enough to guide action and flexible enough to correct itself when predictions break. It can be pushed around by mood and context, and it can be fooled by clever patterns, but those are the trade-offs of a system optimized for speed and survival. So perception is best understood as a controlled hallucination, guided by signals from outside, constrained by physics, but assembled inside according to the brain's best models and priorities. Two people can look at the same sky and have different experiences, not because the sky changed, but because their models and priorities differ. What you feel as the solid now is the outcome of a constant conversation between expectation and evidence. If the world you see is assembled moment by moment, then the flow that stitches those moments together must be assembled too. The brain not only builds scenes, it builds the sense of passage between them, which raises a quiet question that will take us further in. How does this system handle the stretch and squeeze of time within the reality it constructs? And what makes a moment feel long, short, or oddly familiar when everything in the room stays the same? You know that sudden drop in your stomach when a car swerves in your lane, the way the world tightens as if someone turned down the volume on everything except your pulse, the clock stretching inside your head while the outside world keeps its speed. In that pocket, sound seems to step back. Your breath grows loud. Each heartbeat snaps into focus like individual frames in a film, and a second feels loaded with more events than a minute usually holds. You didn't choose that warping. It arrived as a reflex. The mind shifted gears, and time changed with it. Time inside the mind doesn't run on the clock you wear. It bends with emotion, attention, and the amount of detail your brain decides to collect. When the world feels charged, your senses start logging more data points per moment. Your awareness takes more snapshots, and those snapshots pack into memory as dense layers. Later, when you recall the event, you read that density as length. It feels longer, not because more seconds passed, but because more was captured and stored. The opposite feels just as real. You sit with a friend, get pulled into a topic, and 3 hours peel away in what seems like 20 minutes. Or you fall into a hobby, and the background noise of the world goes silent. Your mind trims the scene to what matters for the task. Fewer snapshots get taken, so the record that gets laid down is lighter, thinner. When you look back, it compresses. Time didn't speed up on the wall clock, but your brain wrote a shorter story for that span. Novelty plays a simple trick with a deep effect. New experiences ask more of your attention, so you gather more detail. That's why early years feel sprawling. First neighborhoods, first friends, first summers, each day demanding a full scan. As routines settle in, days repeat, and the brain stops spending precious energy on what it already predicts. Weeks line up, patterns take over, and the record gets sparse. Without novelty, time collapses into fewer memorable markers, a blur formed not by speed, but by repetition. In the background, a small, watchful system tags moments with urgency. During threat or intense emotion, that system sends a surge of signals that raise sensitivity. Vision sharpens and narrows. Hearing tunes to the most relevant frequencies. Muscles prepare. The mind starts sampling more densely, and that higher sampling rate lays down a heavier trace. Later, the moment plays back in slow motion because your memory stored more frames per second than usual. The event didn't stretch. Your record of it grew thicker. There's another kink at the seams of time that shows up as déjà vu. The sense of familiarity arrives before the source of that feeling does. Recognition fires too early, so the present gets tagged as remembered even though you can't link it to a specific past. It feels eerie because your timeline is slightly out of order for a heartbeat. The label shows up before the container. It resolves almost as soon as it appears, but the oddness lingers as a reminder that your systems for tracking now and then coordinate with tight timing, and sometimes they misalign. Internal states also twist your sense of duration. Anxiety dials up your internal metronome, crowding minutes with more check-ins and more scans. Each second holds extra monitoring, so urgency rises and time feels crowded. Depression can flatten that rhythm, reducing contrast between moments until a day feels uniform and overlong. It's not just mood, it's the rate at which your mind samples and compares. The clock hasn't changed. The density of internal events has. Boredom has its own texture. When nothing engages you, attention drifts onto the passing of time itself. You start counting, not numbers, but sensations. The blink, the fidget, the sigh, the shuffle from the hallway. The mind keeps asking, has anything changed yet? That vigilance stretches the moment because you're measuring it in smaller and smaller units. Deep focus does the reverse. When all bandwidth routes into a single task, the system ignores the flow of seconds. It stops checking the clock inside you, which is why long stretches can disappear without leaving much trace. Practice changes this mapping too. When you learn a new skill, hours feel full and long because your brain is building a rich model. Errors, corrections, feedback, progress. Once you automate the steps, your mind lets the routine run without logging each move. The memory becomes a thin outline. Commuting the same path each day shows the effect. The first few drives lay down landmarks. After a month, the drive disappears from your internal record, and you arrive with barely anything stored between departure and destination. Even small changes can slow perception. Taking an unfamiliar route, noticing new architecture, listening for textures in a piece of music you thought you knew. These acts pull attention back into sampling mode. The world grows detailed, and your impression of time expands with that detail. You can feel this effect when traveling. Days stretch not because they are longer, but because every door handle, every street corner, every sound asks for processing. Those new cues multiply the snapshots. Fear narrows the field but increases granularity within it. Joy often broadens it, allowing more of the scene to enter awareness, even if each piece is less detailed. Both states change the felt length of intervals. In one, seconds are thick and sharp. In the other, they are wide and light. The content of the moment matters less than the way your nervous system allocates its resources. Where attention lands, what it includes, how much it records. These choices shape your internal timeline. You can test some of these effects during simple tasks. Count to 60 with eyes closed and no cues. Your estimate will shift based on arousal. If you've had coffee or you're anticipating a message, your minute tends to arrive early because your internal clock ticks fast. If you're calm and relaxed, your minute can drift long. Dull tasks feel stretched because you keep checking. Engaging tasks feel short because you stop monitoring. These are not quirks. They are signatures of how attention manages limited bandwidth. Memories gain their apparent length during recall, not during the event itself. The brain reconstructs from stored fragments, and the number of fragments matters. A single crisp moment can feel long if it contains many distinct elements. A whole afternoon can feel short if the mind recorded only a few broad strokes. The more your senses are involved, the richer the trace. The richer the trace, the longer the remembered time feels. This is why sensory details, sounds, textures, smells, softly push a memory open when you return to it. Some experiences strip away time by reducing self-monitoring. When challenge matches skill, you ride the edge with ease. The system quiets any process that isn't needed for the task. The chatter about how you're doing goes offline. Without that narration, your internal timekeeper idles. You come back to yourself later and find that the clock moved while you were gone. It didn't jump. You simply stopped measuring. Routines can be redesigned to reclaim length. Vary start points. Change the order of steps. Learn a new route on a familiar walk. Break patterns that your brain has set to autopilot. Even small novelty reintroduces attention and slows the felt passage. If you want days to feel longer, add firsts, a new dish, a skill, a new vantage point in the same room. Your mind will respond with more sampling, and the record of the day will thicken. On the other side, if you crave lightness, reduce the number of inputs competing for awareness. Single task. Turn down alerts. Let attention sink into one stream at a time. You'll likely find that time compresses, but the experience feels smoother and less jagged. This isn't an argument for one mode over the other, only a way to see how you participate in shaping your sense of duration by guiding what the mind monitors. These shifts show up even in quiet evenings. A short walk at dusk can feel long if you listen for distant sounds, notice small changes in temperature between sunlit and shaded steps, or track the rhythm of your pace. The same walk can feel brief if your mind rides a single thought. Neither is wrong. Both are constructions. The scene outside stays the same while the inner sampling rate climbs or falls. When stress builds, your inner clock often speeds up. Tasks stack, and your attention splinters across them. Each micro-switch creates more check-ins, more counting. The day feels frantic and long, yet nothing seems to stick in memory because the record is scattered. Calm allows the opposite. Fewer switches, smoother attention, a tighter narrative. The day may feel shorter, but recollection forms a coherent line. So time inside the mind is not something you pass through. It's something you build, brick by brick, from the pieces attention selects and emotion highlights. The clock on the wall marks equal units, but the brain marks unequal ones, stretching and compressing according to need, interest, and state. What feels long or short arrives from the density and distribution of your impressions, not from the second hand. If time feels elastic, it's because you make it that way, mostly without noticing. You shift the sampling rate by how you attend. You adjust the frame size by what you care about. You change the timeline by seeking novelty or settling into routine. And every adjustment leaves a trace you will later call a memory. Which leads to the next step, because the moments that feel stretched and the ones that vanish don't just pass. They become the raw materials your mind will use tonight and tomorrow to keep telling you who you are and what your life has been. You nod along, catching the rhythm of a story, and then it hits you. You haven't heard the last few sentences at all, or your eyes drift down a page while your mind takes a side trip, and when you look back, the words feel like footprints you never made. It feels odd, a little embarrassing, like attention slipped out the back door without telling you. But that moment isn't a failure. It's a clue to how attention really works. We like to think of attention as a clean beam we point at the world. In practice, it flickers, it tightens and loosens. It resets over and over, often without your consent. The part of your brain that handles this coordination is busy even when you feel still, handing out resources, policing distractions, and deciding what gets to move forward. That constant reshaping keeps you from being overwhelmed, but it also means your experience comes in pulses, not a continuous stream. Most of what surrounds you never makes it through. The hum under the counter fades. Traffic blends into a single wash. Yet a single glass clink can pull you back, crisp and immediate. The system does this to protect bandwidth. It filters first, then presents the highlights. You don't hear the room's full audio track unless something in it changes meaning. Then the gate opens fast. Multitasking feels like a clever workaround. You answer a text while stirring a pot, then realize you lifted the spoon and put nothing in. You jump between apps and return to a conversation with the thread snapped. You try to read an article while following lyrics and discover you kept both, but understood neither. Dividing attention is less like splitting a beam and more like turning it off and off again in quick cycles. Each restart costs you. Those costs don't vanish when you switch back. A residue clings to the mind, a kind of afterimage from the last task. You can feel it when you return to writing after checking a message, and the line you were building dissolves. The brain needs a beat to reorient to the previous goal, rebuild the structure and working memory, and re-enter the same mental groove. Until that rebuild finishes, thinking feels slippery. You can sense this delay in small ways. You tab back to a spreadsheet and stare at the cell you meant to change, but your hands hesitate. You reopen a recipe and reread the same line twice. You step back into a meeting after a quick glance at your calendar and lose the thread of why a decision mattered. It isn't laziness. It's the way task switching resets context. When attention narrows, it becomes surgical. In a crowded room, you can hold one voice in the center and let everything else blur. Then you hear your name from across the room, and your attention rotates like a satellite dish, suddenly aligned with a distant signal. You didn't choose to scan for your name, but part of you did it anyway, combing the noise for relevance behind the scenes. The same system that ignores a dozen conversations can snap to one that matters in a heartbeat. That snap tells you something important. The mind is always listening below awareness. It sifts, tags, and keeps a quiet watch for cues that might require a shift in focus. When a cue hits, your name, a sudden change in tone, a word tied to a goal, the gate opens and energy floods in. This makes attention feel voluntary on the surface and automatic underneath. Both layers work together, whether you notice them or not. Sometimes the system's precision has a cost. When focus locks onto a task, the rest of the scene can drop out. You can miss a bright sign while counting steps, fail to see a friend waving while you search for your keys, or walk past the item you came to buy because you're rehearsing an email in your head. If attention doesn't select something, it may as well not exist. That feels strange, but it's consistent. Consciousness receives what attention lets through. This selectivity can be startling. You can watch a small group pass a ball and track every exchange, yet fail to notice someone walk straight through the scene if your instruction prioritizes the passes. That isn't a moral failing or carelessness. It's the brain doing triage. It chooses the task and drops anything that threatens performance, including obvious things, until the goal is complete. Choice of task matters more than you think. Simple routines that align with your current goal slip through easily. Hard tasks with ambiguous steps force attention to restart often. If the target keeps moving, switch between email, a draft, a chat, a calendar. The mind accumulates residue faster than it clears it. That is why the day can feel busy but thin, like you moved a lot and went nowhere. There is a different mode, though. When the task matches your skill and the feedback loop is clear, attention can stabilize. Musicians feel it when a passage finally locks in. Coders feel it when a problem yields and patterns line up. People who knit, draw, chop vegetables, or smooth clay fall into it as the hands take up a rhythm and the mind settles. Self-monitoring fades. You stop checking how you're doing and simply do. In that state, time loosens. Minutes compress. The internal narrator grows quiet. You aren't trying to concentrate because there's nothing left to choose. The system that usually flickers finds a groove and stays there, which is rare and satisfying. It isn't magic. It's what happens when the brain doesn't have to keep reconfiguring for new demands. Reduced switching frees resources to deepen the work at hand. You can invite this steadiness without forcing it. Trim the number of open tasks. Set a small, clear target with a visible finish. Let the room be a little less noisy, not silent, just uncomplicated. Allow a cue that means, now we start. A certain chair, a certain song, the first sip of tea. These signals reduce the negotiation your brain would otherwise do at the threshold, making it easier to enter and harder to fall out. But perfection isn't the point. Attention will still blink. That blink is part of how the system keeps you safe. It checks the edges for change. looks for threats or opportunities, and returns to the center if nothing urgent appears. The more pressure you place on it to be unbroken, the more it strains. Treat it like a muscle and it resists. Treat it like a rhythm and it cooperates. You can feel this in daily habits. When you set the phone across the room before a call, you're not showing willpower as much as redesigning the environment so the gatekeepers have fewer shiny candidates to evaluate. When you read before bed instead of scrolling, you remove fast, novel cues that would keep attention popping. Even small changes can let the system settle and recover. Nature helps for a related reason. Environments with gentle patterns and soft variation ask less from the control systems while still holding interest. The eyes can drift from branch to branch without sharp jumps in demand. You are not forced to decide every second what matters. That quieter mode restores capacity, which is why a short walk can make an hour of work run smoother. Attention shapes memory. When you divide focus, fewer details make it into the record. You may carry the gist, but lose texture. If you give a moment your full gaze, it lands more securely and returns with more depth. This is not moral advice, it's mechanics. The brain can encode richly when resources gather in one place, and it encodes thinly when the beam keeps restarting. It also means that interruptions don't just steal time, they alter what you keep. A conversation broken by alerts yields fragments. A meal eaten while skimming messages becomes a blur, easy to forget. A task finished without breaks stands out in recall, not because it was more important, but because attention held it long enough to carve a clear trace. The quiet hero here is working memory, the chalkboard that holds what you're doing right now. It's small, it smudges easily. Every switch rubs the board. Protecting it isn't about isolation from the world, it's about kind timing. Bundle small distractions together and clear them at once. Leave yourself a note that marks where to re-enter a task. These little anchors reduce the price of leaving and returning. There's an odd kindness in accepting the limits. When you feel your mind slide off a page, move your eyes away for a moment and let the system reset on purpose. When a friend talks and you drift, own it quickly and ask them to repeat the last line. That honesty lowers the hidden load of pretending, which frees attention to come back stronger. In the end, attention is not weak. It's sensitive and precise. It juggles impossible volumes of data by choosing almost nothing and doing it well, then shifting when the world requires it. It keeps you from drowning in noise, even when that means you sometimes miss the obvious. It also grants you the best moments of effortlessness when conditions align and it can rest inside a single thing. And that leads us forward. If attention decides what enters awareness, then what you keep depends on a different process entirely. The mind doesn't file moments like photographs. It rebuilds them, edits them, and sometimes invents parts that make the story work. You're holding an old photo, staring at faces that haven't changed in years, while your own mind quietly edits the scene. You remember a joke told right after the shutter clicked, a burst of laughter that isn't captured, a breeze that carried a hint of rain, and the way your chest felt light for no clear reason. None of that appears in the image, and yet the memory feels whole. It plays like a short film with sound, temperature, and meaning. Then a doubt slips in. Did that joke happen in a different moment nearby? Was the rain actually last week? Still, your mind offers a complete experience, coherent and certain. We're taught to think of memory like storage, a place where facts get filed, but it works more like a storyteller that rebuilds the past each time you visit it. The story uses fragments, sensations, emotions, bits of context, and stitches them together into a narrative that fits who you are now. Because it's trying to be helpful, it fills gaps so the past makes sense. That process keeps life feeling stable, even as details shift. The reconstruction can add a smile that wasn't there, or soften an argument that, at the time, felt sharper. The goal isn't accuracy, The goal is continuity, usefulness, and a self that remains intact from one day to the next. Here's the strange part. Recalling a memory doesn't just pull it off a shelf. The act of remembering loosens its threads. When you bring a memory into the present, it becomes open to change. Your current mood, what you've recently learned, even the room's tone can slip into it. Then, when you stop thinking about it, the mind stores a revised version. Over years, repeated recalls can slowly tilt the story, one memory leaning on another until a slightly different past feels natural. This isn't malfunction, it's a flexible design that lets the mind update lessons without having to relive the original event. Emotion teaches the brain what to keep. Intense moments get tagged for priority. That's why childhood embarrassment can still sting decades later, while last Tuesday's lunch has already dissolved. The system ranks by relevance to survival and identity. A sharp fear, a bright happiness, a deep grief. Those get extra attention, and their traces spread into many networks. Neutral routines fade because they carry little guidance for the future. When life feels repetitive, it's not that nothing happened. It's that the storyteller found little worth retelling. Unfinished business also refuses to step aside. Tasks you meant to complete and conversations that ended halfway keep pinging in the background. The mind holds them like open loops, a mild tension that keeps them accessible. That's why an unsent message resurfaces at odd hours, or a half-done project pops into mind when you're trying to relax. The system isn't nagging for its own sake. It uses that tension to guard your future goals. Only when you finish the loop, or decide clearly to abandon it, does that tug ease and the mind shift the item into lower priority. Memory and imagination share a workshop. They use overlapping circuits, which makes recall vivid, but also leaves it open to invention. Thinking about a scene you never lived can borrow textures from scenes you did. Suggestions, hints, and even a stray comment can guide what gets filled into the story. Over time, a detail you added as a guess can settle in and feel as real as anything else. Not because you're careless or dishonest, but because the system aims for a complete narrative. A complete narrative sometimes needs to supply missing pieces, so the mind can move forward without uncertainty. This overlap helps explain why a single prompt can bring an entire era rushing back. Smell, especially, has a direct line to older emotional circuits. One hint of a certain soap or a spice from a street stall, and you're there. The room layout, the light on the floor, the person in the next chair. It arrives with a feeling state attached, as if the body remembered first and handed the moment up to thought. You didn't try to recall it. The memory used you to resurface, carrying color, temperature, and posture. That's the system at its most embodied. Memory as a full-body echo rather than a list of facts. Not all details compete equally for space. The first and last moments of an event grip more tightly than the middle. Openings set the tone. Endings decide how it will be filed, pleasant, unfinished, or instructive. We build our summaries around those edges without realizing it, which is why the last minutes of a trip can redeem a rough week, or a sour goodbye can stain a day that was mostly fine. The storyteller weighs transitions heavily because they signal meaning and predict what similar moments might require in the future. Music can open hidden doors. A few bars of a song, and your posture shifts as if a chord pulled you back to a specific room or street. Rhythm recruits motor and auditory areas, binding movement with sensation and mood. That blend makes the memory trace wide, so it's easier to find later. Even when other routes weaken, a melody can still lead the way. Lyrics supply language, rhythm supplies timing, and the body supplies the feeling. The moment returns not as a photograph, but as a scene you can almost step into. The fact that forgetting happens is not a flaw. You need it. Letting go helps the mind generalize. If every detail stayed, new learning would get stuck in the clutter. forgetting prunes old branches so new ones can grow. It also keeps you from becoming trapped by outdated lessons. A method that worked years ago might fail today. A person you misjudged might now be safe. When the system releases irrelevant traces, it frees attention for what matters now. That too is a kind of wisdom, the humility to discard what no longer helps. Consider how easily present state edits the past without your permission. If you feel low, the mind pulls memories that match, as if rummaging for evidence. On brighter days, the same episodes look balanced or even funny. The events didn't change, but the storyteller chose different frames. That's because memory serves the needs of the moment as much as those of history. It asks, who are you trying to be right now, and which past will support that? With every recall, it answers by selecting, emphasizing, and trimming. This doesn't mean the past is lost. It means the past is alive. If you deliberately revisit a memory with new knowledge or compassion, you can tilt how it guides you. Sitting with it while your body is calmer changes which features stand out. Writing it down can anchor details that would otherwise shift on the next recall. Pairing it with a new cue, like a different scent or a steady rhythm, gives your mind another path in and can soften the old emotional charge. The reconstruction still happens, but now it leans toward growth. False memories sound troubling, yet they reveal how the mind strives for coherence. When faced with gaps, it fills them in plausible ways. Over the long arc of a life, this ability keeps your story unified. You know who you are, what you value, and how you got here, even if certain details wobble. The price of that internal stability is occasional inaccuracy, but the benefit is an identity that can adapt without shattering. If you need precision for critical moments, you can support the system, write contemporaneous notes, check external records, gather multiple perspectives. Otherwise, letting the story breathe enables resilience. There's another quiet rule. The body remembers in its own language. A tightened throat, a warm chest, a restless foot. These sensations carry pieces of experience that words can miss. When you recall something hard, the body may react first. That response is a form of memory, and if you meet it with steady attention, you can often revise the lesson it delivers. Slow breathing, safe company, and grounded posture can teach the system a new ending. The next time that memory rises, it can arrive with less charge, not because the facts have changed, but because the body learned a different way to hold them. There are practical ways to work with a mind that edits. Close loops instead of letting them hum in the background. Set clear end points for projects and conversations so the system can relax its grip. Use beginnings and endings to your advantage. Start with intention. Finish with care. When you want to keep a memory accurate, capture it soon in plain language and in context. When you want to reshape how a memory guides you, bring it up gently, in a state of calm, and let a wiser present self do the editing. Over time, these choices accumulate into the version of you that your mind rehearses and recalls. So memory isn't a shelf of preserved moments. It's a living studio, arranging scenes to support tomorrow's choices. Each recall is an invitation to refine who you are becoming, whether by softening a hard edge, strengthening a helpful lesson, or letting go of a scene that no longer fits. The self that rises from this process stays flexible, more responsive than rigid, more learning than fixed. And because the storyteller never works alone, the next layer waits nearby, the feelings that set the stage for what the mind notices, keeps, and edits from moment to moment, quietly steering how the present looks before any story gets written at all. You walk into the same room 2 days in a row. Nothing in the room has changed, the same chair by the window, the same stack of books, the same light falling across the floor, but on the anxious day, the corners look sharp and the shadows feel deeper. Your shoulders tense before you notice you're bracing. On the calm day, the space seems warmer, edges soften, and the light looks a touch richer, as if the room is breathing with you instead of against you. The difference isn't in the room, it's in the state that meets it. We tend to think emotions show up after we judge the scene, like a soundtrack added to a finished film. But the processing runs earlier than that. Emotional circuits tune the sensory channels before awareness arrives, adjusting what your eyes prioritize and how your ears weigh background noise. Your brain isn't only asking, what is out there? It's also asking, what matters right now? That second question sets the filters. Before a single thought forms, the system nudges color, contrast, and focus to match your body's readiness. If you're keyed up, the brain may push the world toward high alert, raising the volume on signals that hint at risk. If you're safe and settled, it broadens the field and loosens the grip on vigilance, letting details feel gentler. This is why two people can stand in the same hallway and report very different scenes. Anxiety tightens the visual frame and peripheral vision dims, as if the world is closing in. Objects loom larger than they are. Movement in the margins grabs attention like a tug on the sleeve, and neutral faces can read a degree colder. Joy does the opposite. The field widens, colors feel more saturated, and the mind is more willing to linger on nuance. On a good day, a pattern in wood grain becomes interesting. On a tense day, that same pattern barely exists. The variation is not a trick of personality. It's a direct shift in how the sensory layers process the incoming stream. Emotion is not just a feeling, it's a posture the whole brain-body system takes toward action. Fear primes the eyes to prefer edges and contrast, quickens scanning, and shortens the time between noticing and reacting. It's a mode built to detect changes that may signal trouble. Contentment eases the bias toward sharpness and invites a wider, slower look. You take in more context. You allow complexity to sit without forcing a decision. Think about how your gaze behaves when you're lost in a calm song versus when you hear a sudden thud in the other room. The mechanics shift under the surface, preparing you either to brace or to explore. We also borrow each other's internal settings. In a room with tense shoulders and clipped tones, your body starts making adjustments before you identify why. Tiny changes in someone's face, the pace of their movements, the strain in their voice. These cues move through you quickly, and your own posture and breathing begin to match. The mood becomes a shared field that shapes what everyone sees. A group at ease opens the lens. A group on edge makes everything look more pointed. None of this depends on anyone announcing how they feel. Your system mirrors the weather around it and folds it into perception. There is another channel that shapes this exchange. Under stress, people release subtle signals through sweat that others can register without noticing the source. Those signals nudge the brain toward a more vigilant state. You might walk into a space and feel a thin thread of urgency before you hear a word. That shift carries into vision, hearing, and attention, making ordinary sounds feel sharper and dull light seem colder. Even when the threat is not yours, your body updates its settings as if it might be, and the world takes on that tone. You can feel the influence from the inside out as well. The rhythm of your heart, the depth of your breath, and the quiet tension in your muscles make up the raw material of a feeling before it has a name. Slow, steady breathing and a loose jaw leave the mind free to broaden. Shallow breaths and a clenched back tell the system to narrow. Your eyes then inherit those instructions. A relaxed body invites softness and color and slope in lines. A braced body insists on contrast and the shortest path to a conclusion. Even small shifts matter. Lift your head and open your chest, and the scene can feel less crowded. Collapse inward, and the same scene tightens. Posture works like a dial. Sitting tall or standing upright can nudge alertness higher and reduce the sense that everything is pressing in. Slumping, especially for long stretches, can feed the signal that energy is low and the environment is heavy. It's not about forcing a pose, it's about recognizing that the body sends continuous updates to the brain about the state of the world. The mind answers by tuning perception to match. Change the input from the body, even a little, and the picture on the inside changes with it. Your face also participates. There's a feedback loop between expression and mood. A small, genuine hint of a smile can move the needle, not by pretending things are fine, but by sending a different pattern of signals upstream. The muscles involved in a smile, around the eyes and mouth, tell the brain something about safety and social connection. That message can ease tightness in perception, allowing a wider field and less threat bias. A scowl does the reverse, recruiting attention toward potential problems and dimming the space where softer details live. Smell cuts directly into this network. Scents travel along a more ancient route in the brain, one that ties closely to memory and feeling. A familiar soap, a bit of citrus, the first hint of rain. They carry a cluster of old associations and bring emotional context with them. This can shift the way the room appears without you noticing the cause. A scent linked to comfort can make the world feel a shade warmer, with edges less severe. A smell tied to worry can tilt everything toward caution. The change happens quickly because scent and emotion share a deep connection in the architecture of the brain. Music works in a similar layered way, especially when it's tied to past experiences. A song that once soothed you can bring back the same calm, softening perception in the present. Rhythm steadies the body. Melody slows the breath, and those shifts in state widen the lens. The environment itself remains the same, but the mind's readiness has changed, and the room follows suit in your awareness. This is not a trick. It's how a state becomes a way of seeing. Emotion also governs what the mind lets rise from memory. When you feel low, related memories line up more quickly. The brain uses mood as a filter to decide which stored scenes are relevant. Sadness brings similar episodes forward, reinforcing its own story. The present then seems to confirm the feeling because the past you recall matches it. When you feel steady, a different set of memories comes to the surface. Moments of ease, small successes, or times when a day felt manageable. Those recollections lend the present a sense of possibility. In both cases, emotion curates the material that perception uses to make sense of the moment. This feedback loop can become strong. An anxious state narrows perception, which makes neutral cues seem ambiguous or negative, which then calls up more anxious memories, tightening the loop. A calm state broadens perception, opens space for neutral or positive cues to register, and pulls forward memories that support openness. The cycle moves quickly and can operate beneath conscious awareness, but it remains a cycle, which means it can be influenced. Small interventions change the lens. A steady exhale lengthens the gap between sensation and interpretation. A brief walk resets muscle tone and eye movement patterns, loosening the bias toward scanning for threat. Softening the gaze, letting the eyes rest on a wider area rather than a single point, signals safety to the nervous system. Each of these adjustments shifts the emotional setting first, and perception follows. It's not about denying a feeling, it's about giving the system a different starting point from which to see. None of this suggests that the world outside isn't real. It means that the reality you experience is co-authored by your internal state. Your mind doesn't just tint the picture, it edits the stream at the source, deciding which notes to emphasize and which to leave in the background. In this way, emotion acts as pre-processing. It shapes the data before it becomes your conscious scene. That's why the same room can feel harsh one day and gentle the next without a single object moving. Once you recognize how personal this is, everyday shifts make more sense. A tense commute leaves you more likely to read a neutral comment as cold. A good laugh at lunch makes the afternoon light seem kinder. The body broadcasts, the brain adjusts, and perception changes in step. Understanding this isn't a trick for forced positivity. It's a way to notice the mechanics and find small handles you can turn, especially when the lens has narrowed more than a situation truly demands. And if the world you see can tilt so easily based on an internal setting, it follows that outside inputs can steer that setting without your noticing. The faintest hint of a scent can tune your readiness. A gentle sound in a space can lower voices and slow movements. Subtle cues in an environment can suggest how to feel before you form a thought about it. That quiet guidance is everywhere, and it arrives early, shaping how the next moment looks and how the mind decides to meet it. You step into a coffee shop and your voice drops without a thought. No barista shushed you. No sign told you to be quiet. The soft hiss of the espresso machine, the clink of cups, the low murmur of others sets a tone your brain reads as library adjacent, and your volume slides down to match. Or you pass a bowl of lemons at the entrance to a store and feel a nudge to straighten a shelf or toss a receipt in the bin. You never link the fresh citrus scent to the sudden orderliness in your hands. It simply feels like your choice. These nudges don't ask your permission. They happen a few steps ahead of conscious awareness, and by the time you notice yourself doing something, the brain has already adjusted course. That's the quiet rule here. Most influences reach action before they reach explanation. The brain treats subtle cues like a weather report, ambient and constant, and adjusts behavior the way a sailor trims a sail. Lighting sets tone. Layout suggests how to move. Background sounds hint at what's appropriate. Add a stray frown or a relaxed shoulder, and your own posture shifts to match. The conscious mind often witnesses the moment after the shift, then builds a tidy story about why you acted that way. The timing is off by just enough that the story feels true, even when the trigger never crossed your awareness. This becomes hard to ignore when you look at how quickly impressions steer movement. A brief glimpse of someone with a slow, careful gait can make your own steps soften. You don't plan it. Your motor system calibrates to the social rhythm around you. Images that suggest watchfulness nudge honesty and cooperation, as if a tiny social contract tightened in the room. Even word flashes that pass too quickly to read can tilt mood. A cheerful label beside a bland image can leave it feeling warmer. A harsh one can cool it. You might report no difference at all, yet your choices drift a few degrees in a consistent direction. Emotions don't stay inside their owners. They leak. A tense jaw changes breathing in a group. A clipped tone raises shoulders halfway across a table. One person who stays steady can lower the pulse of a whole meeting. You sense these currents before you pass a single sentence. Micro-expressions ripple across faces for fractions of a second. Tiny eyebrow lifts, brief tightness around the eyes, and your brain logs them without asking you. Posture shifts carry the same signals. A room where everyone leans forward asks you to lean forward too, to speed up, to sharpen your responses. A room with open shoulders and slower movements lets your own nervous system release its grip. No one announces it. The field just changes, and you move with it. Context does more than nudge. It sets rules your brain follows automatically. Dimmer lighting invites quieter voices and more reflective tones. The sight of books or study tables brings out a whisper even in spaces that aren't libraries. Soft cafe soundscapes encourage free association and gentle focus, loosening rigid thinking enough for ideas to link. A tidy room saves mental effort by reducing the number of items your attention has to manage, leaving more bandwidth to plan or create. None of this requires conscious approval. The environment provides a template for how to be here, and your brain fills it in. There's another channel at work that rarely gets named while it does its job. Your nose listens for information your conscious mind never hears. Bodies under stress release compounds that others detect. Without noticing a smell, your vigilance can rise. You scan a little more. You feel a bit on edge with no clear source. Fear has a similar broadcast. It primes the people nearby to tighten their attention, react faster, and move cautiously. These signals don't announce themselves the way a shout would. They adjust thresholds deep in sensory and emotional circuits, dialing readiness up or down based on what other bodies report. This sensitivity to social attention runs in the background too. Tiny shifts in a room, changes in shadow, slight movements at the edge of vision can make you straighten or turn your head before you register why you moved. You might call it feeling watched. More often, it's a radar tuned to subtle patterns that matter for safety and social standing. That radar works quicker than the story you tell about it later. By the time you identify the source, your body has already adopted a stance, slowed or quickened, prepared to greet or avoid. Language itself can tug at the wheel with barely a trace. Words flash too fast to name, still bend evaluation. A face paired with a fleeting positive cue can seem more likable moments later. A negative cue can plant a faint chill. You don't remember seeing the cue, which is the point. Your appraisal system integrates micro-data, then hands conscious judgment a result with no footnotes. It's not deception. It's efficiency. The brain spares conscious bandwidth by letting lower levels handle the first pass. These influences stack with the unfinished loops that cling to attention. A message you meant to answer, a task you left halfway done, a conversation that paused at a tense moment. Each one holds a little charge. That pull doesn't feel like a dramatic distraction. It feels like a soft hum you can't turn off. It colors mood and weakens focus, sometimes enough to cost sleep. Closing the loop releases the tension, which is why checking a box or sending a short reply can feel disproportionately relieving. The mind tracks open goals to keep you aligned with future actions, but the tracking itself occupies space you could use for something else. Social timing layers on top. When people believe they are being observed, even by minimal cues, they act more generously or stick closer to stated norms. In a group, shared responsibility can evaporate as each person waits for someone else to move. Remove the group and responsibility sharpens. You step in because the situation feels like yours to handle. This isn't a flaw in character. It's a shift in context that changes how the brain weighs risk, effort, and social cost. Mirroring is a quiet bridge between minds. Match someone's pace, echo a gesture, soften your voice to their tone, and warmth grows without a single direct appeal. The person feels seen at a level beneath words. You don't have to choreograph it. Your system tends to mirror automatically when you feel safe. When trust is thin, you hold back, and the alignment never happens. These micro-adjustments keep conversations smooth and reduce friction. They also show how much connection relies on sync rather than argument. Attention is also subject to a pattern bias that makes new ideas seem to appear everywhere once you learn them. After hearing a term, you notice it repeatedly, as if the world suddenly filled with it. The world didn't change. Your filters did. What was previously discarded as noise now pings as relevant, which can make the idea feel more important or urgent than it is. That shift can steer choices, purchases, even beliefs, because salience shapes what you consider and what you ignore. Scent keeps whispering in the background as you move through spaces. A hint of citrus makes tidying feel natural. Soap-like notes cue thoughts of cleanliness and rule-following. Warm spices invite lingering and conversation. You don't need to recognize any of these smells for them to work. They operate like a hand on the volume knob of certain behaviors, turning them up or down a notch. Posture does the same from the inside out. Upright stance signals readiness to your own brain. Slumped shoulders feed a low-energy loop that sets expectations for the rest of the moment. The feedback runs both ways. A small smile can shift mood. A A steadier breath can reduce mental static. These aren't mind-over-matter tricks. They are links in a two-way chain where body state and mental state update each other. Put all of this together, and it becomes clear that behavior is rarely authored by a single, clear choice. It's co-authored by space, scent, sound, posture, group tone, stray words, tiny facial movements, and open loops tugging on attention. You still steer. You still choose. But the wheel has power assist built in, and the road surface matters more than you think. Most of the time, this is not manipulation. It is the nervous system doing what it evolved to do. Respond quickly to patterns that predict outcomes, conserve effort where it can, and keep you aligned with social expectations without flooding conscious thought with constant micro-decisions. This is why small changes in environment pay outsized dividends. Clear the desk and your focus gains room to breathe. Add a cue for quiet and your voice follows. Set one visible reminder to close a lingering task and the low-level tension eases. When a space broadcasts a norm, your brain hears it and adapts. When people around you carry calm, your own system learns a pace that holds steady. And when subtle alarms ring, stress in the air, shoulders hunched, shadows shifting, you adjust before words arrive. The more you notice these currents, the less personal some impulses feel and the more practical they become. If a mood arrived out of nowhere, maybe it rode in on the room. If urgency spiked with no clear cause, maybe an open loop called for attention. If you felt watched, maybe you registered a shift at the edge of sight. None of this excuses behavior. It explains the hidden scaffolding that shapes it. You don't need to see each wire for the system to work. But once you sense the outline, you can nudge the frame, change a scent, adjust a light, settle your breath, and watch your actions follow along. This isn't a loss of agency. It's a better map. You are not a sealed box pushing commands outward. You're a living system in conversation with its surroundings, taking in hints, sending out signals, and staying adaptive. The environment makes suggestions. Your body translates them. Consciousness arrives a beat later to narrate. When you work with that order instead of against it, the push and pull becomes easier to ride, and the next quiet adjustment feels less mysterious and more like a skill you can refine one small cue at a time. Hold your gaze on two gray squares. Same shade, same brightness, yet one looks darker than the other because of the colors around it. Or stare at a motionless grid until it seems to shimmer. Nothing moved, but your mind did. The brain leans on context to predict what should be there, and in most daily situations, those shortcuts help. In these illusions, the predictions clash with the input and your experience tilts. You feel certainty, and yet the display never changed. That quiet mismatch, your sense insisting one thing, the data saying another, exposes how much of seeing is a best guess carried out at high speed. The effect is stable, repeatable, and a little unsettling because you sense the gears turning underneath, trying to resolve a world that refuses to sit still. Now take a simple scene in a cafe. You look down to answer a message, glance up, and swear the counter looks the same. Only later do you realize the display cases have been rearranged, or the chalkboard menu has switched to a new layout. You were there, your eyes were open, and yet you missed the swap. Or think about ordering a drink while the person behind the bar steps away and another person takes their place mid-sentence. Many people stay focused on the payment amount or the question about milk, and the switch sails past unnoticed. This is change blindness in plain sight. Attention decides what gets represented with detail. When attention locks to one slice of the scene, the rest becomes a sketch. If a change happens during a brief interruption, a blink, a glance to the side, the brain stitches the scene back together from assumptions. Those assumptions are usually correct. But when they're not, you get a confident sense of continuity where there was a cut. The same stitching happens inside your eyes. quite literally. There is a thumb-sized hole in each visual field where the optic nerve meets the retina. There are no light-sensing cells there. You should see a blank circle, and yet you don't. Your mind fills it constantly with textures and colors borrowed from the surroundings. The process runs without effort. You move your gaze and the patch slides, but your experience stays whole. This filling in shows up beyond that anatomical gap as well. When you blink, the world doesn't flicker because your brain smooths the interruption. Shadows and reflections suppress detail, but you still feel consistent surfaces. The output is a seamless panorama that never appears punctured or torn, even though the raw input contains gaps and noisy fragments. From the inside, it feels like unbroken reality. From the outside, it's a well-edited composite. Every now and then, another kind of seam shows through. A conversation feels like one you've had before, in a place you can't quite name. The air has a strange repeat quality, and the present moment tilts toward the already known. Déjà vu often fades as quickly as it arrives, but its confidence can be startling. Behind that feeling, recognition systems briefly misalign. A current pattern lands close enough to pass traces to trigger familiarity, even when you can't find a matching episode. Neural circuits in and around memory structures flag the present as remembered while the context machinery lags. The result is a flash of familiarity without an address. It's not a prophecy, it's a timing issue, a tiny lead signal that makes the new feel old for a heartbeat or two. Then the puzzle pieces click, the sensation fades, and the day rolls forward. These slips, visible in illusions and déjà vu, echo in your sense of time. In threat, seconds seem to dilate. You notice sound fading to the edges, breath turning loud, and each beat of the heart becoming distinct. It's not that external clocks slow, it's that the brain increases sampling and stores more detail per slice of time. Later, when you recall the event, the memory feels dense and layered, which your mind reads as a long stretch. In flow, the opposite happens. Your attention narrows around a single channel, writing, playing, solving, and you take fewer mental snapshots. Fewer markers mean fewer landmarks in memory, and hours compress into a small package when you look back. The subjective passage changes with task demands and arousal, without any change in the outside world's pace. That elasticity keeps resources focused where they matter most. The theme repeats with static images that appear to move. A grid with high contrast edges sets off motion detectors in the visual system, which evolved to flag changes across the field. The brain leans toward detecting motion rather than missing it, because in the wild, missing motion could be costly. That bias becomes obvious when a still pattern evokes a drift that isn't there. The same goes for surfaces that seem to bulge when they are flat. Local contrast cues suggest depth, and your brain accepts the suggestion. No new light reaches the retina, but the implied shape wins. You don't toggle between realities. You experience one coherent scene that happens to be wrong about a detail. The illusion feels solid because the mechanism that creates it is the same mechanism that makes ordinary perception stable. Change blindness works not only with physical scenes, but with social ones. In a conversation, you track tone and meaning, so a slight alteration in posture or a swap of an accessory can pass unnoticed. Your mind invests bandwidth in decoding words and intent, letting low-priority features blur. If someone shifts a hat or removes glasses during a brief turn of the head, many people fail to notice, and they remain certain nothing shifted. Again, attention is the gate. What it doesn't admit with full resolution gets reconstructed from expectations and general outlines. Those reconstructions feel normal because they almost always match the world well enough to guide action. Only when an experiment or a clever demonstration reveals the mismatch do you see the cost of those efficiencies. The blind spot filling is a special case of a general rule. The system builds continuity wherever possible. That tendency explains why the world doesn't pop or flicker with each abrupt eye movement. Between saccades, the brain suppresses the blur and uses prediction to keep the scene stable. Small inconsistencies vanish into the model. With the anatomical blind spot, the brain uses surrounding texture, edges, and color to paint in the missing patch. You can make an object disappear into it by aligning it with care. The moment you shift your gaze, the object returns. Most of the time, you never notice the gap at all. That invisibility is the sign of a process doing its job. Déjà vu highlights the same drive for coherence, but along the axis of time. The system would rather declare something familiar than sit with ambiguity. If pattern-matching neurons detect an overlap with stored traces, they broadcast a signal that says, "This fits." For a moment, the flag arrives before context, and you feel a certainty that later proves groundless. The feeling carries weight because it's the same signal that normally helps you navigate repeating situations. It's useful most of the time. In the glitch, you get the usefulness without the accuracy. Time distortion follows an adaptive script too. Danger cues push the brain to capture more details, making a later playback feel expanded. Routine compresses because the brain reduces sampling of redundant information. That is why commutes can shrink in memory and why novel trips feel longer. The change in subjective length isn't an error. It's a smart allocation of resources that prioritizes new and important information for detailed storage. When you later reflect, the density of stored cues shapes how long the period feels. What ties these phenomena together is the constant reliance on prediction, gap-filling, and selective attention. The mind constructs a world that is smooth and actionable. When reality shifts in ways that sneak past the gates, during a glance away, a blink, a task switch, or a high-load moment, the brain assumes continuity and patches the difference. Illusions, the missed swap at the counter, the vanishing object in the blind spot, and the eerie echo of déjà vu all expose the scaffolding. None of this signals a broken system. It signals a system optimized for speed and stability, one that bets on context and usually wins. If the brain can make two identical colors look different based on surroundings, it can also make two identical moments feel different based on internal state. In fear, a second fills with more data. In flow, it empties out. In both cases, the experience seems obvious from the inside. Your sense of truth doesn't flicker, it updates. The updates are guided by what helps you move, decide, and survive with limited bandwidth. These glitches are the edges where construction shows. They are gentle, repeatable proofs that perception is not a mirror, but a model. You experience the model as reality because the mapping is tight most of the time. When it slips, you get a glimpse of the process. Context bending color, attention deciding existence, memory signals setting off false familiarity, and emotional arousal, stretching or squeezing the felt length of a moment. The lesson isn't that you can't trust your senses at all. It's that your senses and your brain collaborate to deliver a workable world, editing out noise, smoothing gaps, and asserting continuity. Once you notice how often the system edits on your behalf, a quieter realization follows. If seeing, timing, and familiarity can all shift under the influence of context and state, then the person you feel yourself to be inside those experiences may not be fixed either. The same predictive, adaptive machinery that makes a gray square look darker can nudge how you read a face, how long a conversation feels, and how certain you are that you've been here before. The model updates, and you move with it, often without noticing the hand on the dial. The brain you carry right now is not the brain you woke up with a year ago. It's not the one you had before you learned your first password, got used to the feel of a new chair, or picked up a minor habit you barely notice anymore. Each of those moments left faint marks that add up. Subtle changes in wiring that shift how signals flow, which routes get priority, and how easily patterns lock into place. Over time, these traces accumulate like small grooves in clay. Some deepen with repetition, others fade when the experience disappears from your life. The result is a living structure that reflects what you do, what you pay attention to, and what you practice. Learning reinforces certain pathways while cooling others. When you repeat a new movement, the same sequence of neurons fires again and again until the path gets efficient. When you explore a concept often enough that it starts to feel familiar, the bridge between related ideas stabilizes. When you stop using a skill for a long stretch, signals reroute and the old lane narrows. This ongoing reshaping is not abstract, it's physical. Synapses strengthen or loosen, cells sprout or retract small branches. Networks shift their coupling so traffic flows along faster roads. What feels like effort at first becomes smoother because the machinery has reorganized to support it. Practice builds structure. Not as a motto, but as a measurable fact. People who train their attention for a few minutes each day find that it gets easier to return to a point of focus after a distraction. People who work through a new language begin to retrieve words more quickly, then catch grammar patterns that once slipped by. Repetition does not only improve performance, it resets thresholds, reduces noise, and sharpens timing between brain regions that need to coordinate. Skills show up as smoother timing, tighter synchronization, and cleaner handoffs between areas that once struggled to stay in step. Some forms of training leave clear signatures. Years of navigating complex street networks correspond with thicker, more connected regions linked to spatial memory and wayfinding. The demands pile up. Encoding landmarks, planning routes, updating positions on the fly, and the neural real estate supporting those operations expands. A similar pattern appears in people who practice instruments that require fast coordination between hearing and movement. The linkages between auditory and motor systems strengthen, making the conversation between them faster and more accurate. The point is simple. Repeat a task that requires a specific set of computations, and the structures that perform those computations adapt to handle the load. What counts as a skill is broader than schoolwork or sports. Pattern recognition in your job, the rules of a particular social environment, even how you handle frustration. Each one can tune circuits. A customer service routine that teaches you to pause, breathe, and respond with a calm phrase becomes a pattern you can access under stress. With time, the response is not a performance, it's a new default. The same is true for sequences your body learns. At first, a new posture feels awkward, like holding a key wrong in a lock. Then your muscles settle. Tiny stabilizers switch on sooner, and the nervous system anticipates balance corrections before you wobble. This is learning too. The brain can also integrate inputs it was never built to receive. People wear belts that vibrate when they face north. At first, the sensation is just a buzzing cue. After weeks, many report a quiet sense of bearing even when the device is off, as if a map has settled just beneath awareness. Others use software that turns color information into sound patterns or converts spatial layouts into tactile pulses. Over time, the mind stops treating these signals as foreign. It binds them into perception, letting a person feel location or hear color as if those channels were always there. These aren't party tricks. They show how flexible perception is when the brain finds a stable mapping between signals and meaning. Emotional learning reshapes circuits too. Calm practice, like simple breath attention, can change how strongly stress pathways fire. With repetition, the networks that regulate impulses and focus become a little more robust, while the systems that trigger alarm can quiet more quickly after a surge. Over months, that translates into shorter recovery times and fewer overshoots when something goes wrong. On the other side, prolonged threat or unpredictability can train the brain to lean toward vigilance. Signals that once registered as neutral pick up a subtle edge. The threshold for possible danger lowers. The body's preparation systems switch on earlier and stay on longer. It's adaptive when safety is uncertain, but it can become exhausting when the context has changed and the habits do not. Even simple practices that seem soft can leave marks. A daily habit of noting a few helpful moments, someone holding a door, a problem that resolved, guides attention towards social cues that had been fading into the background. Over time, the circuits that detect and appraise those cues engage more readily. The effect is not just a feeling, it's a shift in what gets noticed first, where interpretation lands, and how quickly the brain returns to baseline after a bump in the day. Many people underestimate how environmental variety shapes the brain. Walking a new route changes the set of landmarks you encode. Switching the order of a routine forces planning systems to redraw their defaults. Working in a slightly colder room nudges your body regulation systems into a different rhythm, which subtly shifts your sense of alertness. These are small nudges, but across weeks, they diversify the experiences your brain must stabilize. Diversity of input prevents pathways from becoming brittle. It keeps the system ready to adapt. Teaching something you just learned is another reliable reshaper. When you explain a method to someone else, you expose gaps in your own model and anchor the key steps with words and gestures. The process recruits language networks, motor planning for demonstration, and social attention systems, then ties them to the same concept. Those extra linkages make the memory easier to find later, even under pressure. Writing by hand adds another layer. The precise motion of forming shapes links symbols to movements, which gives the brain another route to retrieve the right pattern when it matters. Sleep makes these changes stick. After a day of practice or novelty, the sleeping brain replays fragments of the activity and strengthens the connections that produced useful results. This overnight sorting smooths noise, trims routes that didn't help, and reinforces timing that did. People often wake up able to perform a sequence more fluidly than the night before, not because they tried harder, but because the system continued training offline. Miss that process often enough, and learning stalls. The pathways you tried to build remain weak, and even old skills show a little more jitter. Not every change is permanent. If you stop reading sheet music for months, the speed of recognition slows. If you take a long break from a second language, access grows rusty, but the traces don't fully vanish. When you return, the climb is shorter. Old networks wake, find each other, and re-establish their rhythms more quickly than they did the first time. The brain remembers its own layouts, even when they quiet. The practical takeaway is direct. Repetition aims the chisel. Rest sets the shape. Keep the practice sessions short, spaced, and varied enough that the system keeps paying attention. Let sleep do its part. Expose your senses to new data streams even in small amounts. Add a little body to your learning. Speak aloud, write by hand, gesture when you recall steps. Tie knowledge to action so more networks share the job. This constant remodeling means identity is less like a sculpture and more like a workshop. You are not a fixed set of traits. You are the sum of circuits that have been trained by what you do repeatedly, what you avoid, what you notice, and what you recover from. That's not a slogan. It's the physical state of your nervous system at any moment. It also means the door is open. You can change the routes by changing the practice. You can shift the thresholds by shifting what you expose yourself to. The you that feels steady from day to day is a useful continuity built from ongoing updates. When the system is this malleable, the quiet questions get louder. If practice rewires decision pathways, where do choices start? If attention training changes what enters awareness, who is doing the attending? If sleep edits the storehouse, what is the relationship between the editor and the story it tells? These questions aren't distant philosophy. They describe the experience of living with a brain that is always rewriting itself, often just below the level where you can watch it happen. What becomes clear is that the boundaries of perception are wider than they seem. Add a clean, consistent stream of signals, and the brain will search for a pattern it can absorb. Challenge a habit with gentle, repeated variation, and the system will redraw its defaults without drama. Pressure a circuit too hard, and it can dig a defensive groove. Ease it back with patient, low-intensity practice, and it can find a safer set point. The thread running through all of this is simple enough to hold in a single breath. Experience reshapes structure. Structure guides experience, and the cycle continues. You feel like the same person because your story connects the days, but the machinery under that story is changing at a microscopic level while you work, rest, learn, and forget. Which raises a final, quieter question that the next step will take up. If the hardware keeps shifting and the narrative keeps revising, what exactly is the stable someone who seems to be here, noticing it all? There's a point each night when the day starts to let go. Names blur, the room softens, and your thoughts don't line up as neatly as they did an hour ago. You're still awake, but you're not steering the same way. The mind eases off the throttle, and the quiet systems that watch and sort begin to take over. Breathing evens out. Muscles stop bargaining for attention. The constant commentary fades to a softer hum. This is the handoff. Consciousness loosens its grip, and the night shift steps in without fanfare. You don't feel the transition in one clean moment, but the change is real. The brain is preparing to do work you can't do while you're awake. Sleep looks passive from the outside, but inside it's busy. The processes that store, sort, and integrate your day don't run well under glare. They prefer the dark. As you drift, the brain begins moving fragile, recent experiences into steadier networks. Think of a desk covered in notes. The waking day scatters them, the night gathers, cross-references and files. Some items are tossed. Some get linked to older folders you didn't know mattered. You're not imprinting a perfect record. You're building a map that works better next time you need it. The hippocampus plays a central role in this transfer, laying down the path for what will be accessible later and what gets lost in the noise. Not all memories are treated equally. The mind weighs meaning, not just content. Emotional events get a different kind of handling at night. During certain phases of sleep, the brain rehearses and reframes. Scenes from the day return out of order, stitched into narratives that feel strange but carry a purpose. A conflict from noon shows up with different characters and a new ending. A fear returns with the volume lowered. These aren't random scraps. They are the brain testing responses in a low-risk theater, trimming the sharp edges off stress so you can face similar pressures with steadier hands. If a fear is stubborn, it may visit again, each time shifting shape as systems try to diffuse it. REM sleep drives much of this emotional sorting. Eye movements kick in, body tone drops, and imagery brightens. The brain uses this stage to integrate intense moments into broader patterns without re-triggering the full stress load. It's rehearsal without the body reacting. The result is that the next day you can recall the event while feeling less hijacked by it. Not every dream resolves neatly, of course, but across nights, the trend pulls toward regulation. This is one reason why arguments feel less loaded after a full night, or why grief can move from raw to bearable in small steps as sleep does its quiet work. Problem-solving thrives in this environment. While you rest, your mind loosens the rigid rules that waking logic enforces. Concepts that sat far apart during the day can now share a border. A half-finished melody finds its missing turn when two unrelated motifs align. A stubborn math step opens after the brain links a fresh pathway from a different domain. Writers wake with the sentence that wouldn't come. Engineers see a simpler design because an overlooked constraint was released in the night, allowing a better arrangement to surface. Sleep reorganizes, groups, and tests new hops between ideas, which is why answers can feel obvious upon waking, even if they were invisible the night before. Sometimes the insight arrives inside a dream. The story may carry the feeling of the solution rather than the steps. You wake with certainty about where to look or what to remove, even if the dream was odd. That's the value. The structure beneath the oddness points you toward a cleaner model. Creative work benefits from this shift in mode because it uses breadth. Sleep gives you breadth without asking for effort. It doesn't need your deliberate attention to try combinations. It runs through them as part of its standard routine. Skill learning also strengthens. Repetition during the day lays down the rough draft. Night practice sharpens it. Timing smooths out. Errors that kept repeating become less likely as the brain compares versions and updates the motor plan. Musicians often notice that passages feel easier the day after. Language learners find that words stick and roll off the tongue with less friction. The benefit isn't magic. It's the result of targeted stabilization when interference is low. With fewer new inputs flooding the system, the brain can lock in what matters and prune what doesn't. The default mode network, which turns over self-referential thought and long-range associations, stays active in ways that support this consolidation. It helps integrate personal meaning into the material being stored. That's why your learning bends toward your values and goals, even while you sleep. Threads of identity entwine with new information, making recall not just possible, but relevant. When you retrieve it later, it fits you. And because it fits, you use it, which strengthens it further. The cost of missing this nightly process shows up fast. Without enough sleep, the hippocampus can't do its job well. New information doesn't stick. You can stare at the same page, recite the facts for a moment, and then watch them fade a beat later. You try to learn a task and keep dropping pieces. The warehouse is full, but the loading dock is closed. Emotional control takes a hit too. Irritation spikes, sadness lingers. Small stressors feel bigger because the system that normally dials down yesterday's charge hasn't done its shift. Decision-making gets noisy as a tension phrase. You try to push through on willpower and find that your patience and working memory don't back you up. Perception begins to warp when sleep debt piles up. Micro-sleeps slip in, brief lapses when the brain grabs split seconds of shutdown you didn't authorize. You may find yourself blinking and losing the thread of a sentence, or misreading a simple sign. In severe cases, the border between dream imagery and waking input blurs, and quick, strange impressions intrude. It's not dramatic cinema. It's a sign that networks are failing to maintain a stable model without nightly maintenance. Reaction times stretch. Risk assessment sours. You feel like you're present, but your systems aren't aligned. Even modest restrictions on rest degrade performance. A little less each night compounds. The learning you thought you banked stays fragile. Emotional residue accumulates. The filing job gets rushed and messy. You're more reactive and less adaptable because your mind is carrying unsorted material into each new day. People often blame willpower for this slump, but the problems track back to skipped maintenance. When the night crew doesn't run, the day crew can't keep up. The content of dreams is not a secret message you must decode, but the process that produces them serves clear roles. It tests responses, cools heated experiences, and finds structure in unstructured noise. Dreams fold in sensory traces, half-formed plans, and old memories to see how they might fit. The exact storyline matters less than the stitching. After a series of nights, you often wake with a clearer sense of what to do next, or with less urgency around problems that felt sharp before. Your baseline shifts toward steadiness because the overload has been processed into patterns. Sleep also supports the parts of identity that rely on narrative coherence. When memories consolidate, they do so in relation to the story or telling about yourself, which keeps evolving. The brain updates that story at night, aligning new experiences with older themes or reassigning them to better categories. A failure becomes feedback. A success becomes a reference point for future risk. If a day brings heavy emotion, the night often adjusts your stance toward it, nudging you toward acceptance or resolve. Over time, these adjustments add up to personality changes that feel gradual, but are built scene by scene in the dark. People sometimes try to hack this by forcing late work or trading sleep for extra hours, but the trade is poor. You get more time on the clock and less time when the brain can integrate what you did with what you need to do. The result is more effort and less gain. When you sleep, you're not losing hours. You're investing them in storage, refinement, and regulation. This investment pays off as clarity, calm, and competence during the day. The feel of drifting into sleep can be used as a cue. As thoughts loosen, you can seed a question gently without strain. Not a demand for an answer, just a direction. The mind will take it under advisement and work while you rest. You don't need to chase it. Let the process run. In the morning, check what surfaced. Often the answer is not a full solution, but a better next step, which is all you need to continue. Each night, this cycle repeats. Memories move, emotions settle, skills sharpen, new links form, lost threads are cut. The outcome is subtle. You wake as someone slightly different from the person who went to bed. The change is small across one night, but across many nights, it defines a path. Sleep acts as the invisible architect, shaping mood through dreams, shaping memory through consolidation, shaping personality through ongoing integration. The work is quiet, but it is constant, and it keeps you coherent in a world that keeps moving. And just as the night rewrites the day, other hidden processes are at work too, changing the way attention, perception, and even your sense of self come together without asking for permission. All day long, perception, memory, and emotion steer you without asking for permission. Meditation is the moment you turn toward the current and choose how it moves. It's not exotic. It starts with a simple posture, a steady breath, and a narrow task. Keep attention where you place it. That small act signals the brain to sort differently. When you pause and set up a few minutes of focus, you're choosing which pathways to practice. You're deciding what the mind should get good at. And the brain, opportunistic as always, begins to reassign resources. It's like returning to a room you live in and finally moving the furniture so you can walk through it without stubbing your toe. Within minutes of settling into a quiet, steady rhythm of breathing, a pattern emerges behind the forehead. Networks that help with monitoring and redirecting attention start taking the lead. At the same time, the circuits that push urgent, stress-heavy signals begin lowering their volume. It doesn't require a mystical state. It looks like tiny, continuous corrections. Notice the breath, catch the wandering thought, cue a gentle return. That loop creates a feedback signal the brain can use. The more often you run it, the clearer it gets. The clarity isn't only mental, it shows up as a shift in the balance between top-down control and bottom-up reactivity. You still feel emotions, they just arrive with more space around them. Over weeks and months, the practice leaves a trace you can point to. Imaging research has reported thicker tissue in areas involved in attention and self-regulation, and real changes in regions that process memory and stress. Those shifts map onto daily life in quiet but practical ways. You pause for a second before answering a tense message. You notice the first hint of a spiral and step out of it earlier. Startled responses loosen. Recovery from a jolt speeds up. Even on days you do not sit formally, the carryover appears as fewer missed details, less mental shrapnel after interruptions, and a steadier baseline during mild chaos. Skill grows as a fit between systems. Long-term practice strengthens the links among networks that track focus, resist distraction, and bring attention back when it slips. That triad is what you use when you read a paragraph without rereading a line 5 times, or listen to a friend without mentally writing your reply. These are not rare abilities, they're trainable traits. And like any training, consistency beats intensity. 5 quiet minutes, repeated often, can matter more than a single long session followed by a week of noise. The brain prefers rhythms it can predict. Give it a reliable cue and it will build around it. If this sounds confined to the cushion, it isn't. The same plasticity shows up when you learn any new pattern. New words push speech systems to coordinate differently. A new instrument forces timing circuits to sync with hearing and movement. Even handwriting practice refines control loops that support reading and planning. Each repetition reinforces small, specific connections. Over time, those connections thicken into routes the mind can travel quickly. The effect isn't abstract. Directions become easier to hold in mind. Names stick more often. You switch tasks with less residue clinging to the edges of thought. Meditation adds a special twist because the skill it trains is the meta skill that shapes the rest. Where attention goes, what gets priority, and how quickly you recover from drift. That makes the practice a lever for mood as well. People often report that their baseline becomes less jittery. When a stressor lands, the system still reacts, but the slope down is steeper. Calm returns sooner. That contour mirrors changes seen in the brain's threat response hubs. Meanwhile, the regions that support planning and reappraisal stay more available under load. In practical terms, it's the difference between snapping back a second later versus an hour later. The brain's willingness to adapt isn't limited to what you pay attention to. It will also adopt entirely new kinds of input if given a consistent, meaningful mapping. Devices that turn direction into a gentle vibration on the skin teach the wearer where north lives without thinking about it. After enough exposure, orientation feels less like a calculation and more like a quiet sense that's always present. Other tools translate sound or distance into tactile patterns, letting the body feel information that never touched the eyes or ears. The key is coherence. When signals line up with events in the world, the brain learns the code and promotes it to perception. This kind of sensory expansion reveals how flexible adulthood really is. We're told early that growth has a window that snaps shut, yet the adult brain keeps reorganizing as long as input is stable and practice is repeated. Meditation exploits that rule by giving the system a clean, high-signal task. Watch a target, notice deviations, reset. The repetition is tidy enough to refine circuitry without much noise. Over months, the practice can shift your baseline stance toward the experience. You become the person who notices first and reacts second. That trait threads through communication, work, and rest. Identity often feels like a fixed bundle of traits. The way you speak, the patience you have, the kinds of thoughts that visit under stress. Neuroplastic change suggests a different view. Learn a new language, and the sounds you can hear and produce expand. Start a daily gratitude note, and networks that track social cues and positive detail light up more readily. Move your desk near a window, and your focus patterns adapt to the different light and noise. The self that shows up across days is less a statue and more a set of practiced roots. You think the way you've rehearsed, you feel along the pathways you've reinforced. This doesn't mean you can become anything overnight. The brain trades speed for accuracy early on. New habits feel clumsy and slow because the system is still mapping. That phase is a feature. It forces attention to stay close to the process. As automaticity builds, the experience smooths. Meditation uses this curve deliberately. At first, you spend most of your minutes catching the mind wandering. That's the work. Over time, the mind wanders less far and returns more quickly. The improvement is in the recovery loop, not in never getting distracted. That reframe alone can keep people practicing long enough for the wiring to change. There's also a structural side to the benefits that tends to be overlooked: posture, breath mechanics, and interoception. When you sit upright with the rib cage free, the diaphragm has room to move. That movement feeds signals from the body back to the brain about safety and stability. Slow, steady breathing sends a predictable rhythm through the nervous system. Those signals become part of the calm you feel. In meditation, you harness them on purpose. You're not fighting the body to calm the mind. You're recruiting the body to inform the mind that it can settle. That partnership makes the mental training stick. As practice deepens, attention doesn't only stabilize, it widens. You begin to notice micro-choices before they harden into behavior. A frown starting, a shoulder lifting, a thought forming that would have turned into a comment 10 seconds later. That early detection creates room to edit. Edits repeated often become tendencies. Tendencies practiced long enough begin to feel like disposition. At that stage, outside stressors don't vanish, but they land on a surface that absorbs shock more efficiently. The same events yield less residue. Sleep is cleaner. Recovery is quicker. The adaptability that takes in new senses also takes in new mental habits. If you start and end your day scanning for one small thing you learned, you train the brain to inventory gains. That habit strengthens a learning orientation, which changes how you approach difficulty. Hard things become cues to engage rather than signs to withdraw. Over a season, this shift alters which memories your mind tags as important. It starts collecting evidence that effort works. That archive then influences your expectations, which nudge your choices. Choices, repeated, become the new normal for the pathways that define you. Technology adds another layer by making abstract signals tangible. A wearable that hums gently when your attention strays can close the feedback loop in real time. Tools that convert environmental data into touch can extend awareness into spaces you couldn't perceive before. The lesson isn't that gadgets make you better. It's that the brain will learn whatever is consistent and useful. Meditation is the low-tech version of the same principle. You give yourself a steady signal and a simple rule. The system learns. If personality is a set of practiced predictions and responses, then meditation is a way to edit the practice schedule. Sit for a few minutes and you train noticing. Carry that into a conversation, and you train listening. Bring it into stress, and you train recovery. Stack these small sessions, and the identity that feels like you shifts. You may still recognize your preferences and quirks, but the way they play out changes. You become someone who can wait a beat longer before acting. Someone who can feel agitation without feeding it. The most hopeful part is that intention matters more than intensity. You don't need hours in silence to change the brain. You need a consistent cue, a friendly attitude toward drifting attention, and a willingness to begin again. Begin again becomes the skill. It travels well. It meets you in traffic, in meetings, at bedtime. It's the same motion every time. Notice, return, continue. Each loop leaves a trace. Traces pile up into paths. Paths welcome you back until walking them feels natural. So when you choose to close your eyes and follow the rise and fall of your breath, you're not only chasing calm, you're authoring the habits that will greet your next challenge. The mind you meet tomorrow morning will have been shaped by what you practiced tonight. And that opens a quiet question that waits just beneath the calm you're learning to create. You sit quietly and then notice something subtle click into place. The simple fact that you're here, noticing. A breath rises and falls. Thoughts drift through, not on command, but on their own schedule, like notes that appear and fade in a room with no walls. The awareness that notices those thoughts turns inward for an instant and finds only more noticing. There's no solid object called me in that moment, just this open field where sensations, memories, and tiny urges come and go. It can feel calm or slightly eerie, like looking into a mirror and seeing the entire room behind you, but not the mirror itself. Scientists map activity when you pay attention. Remember a name, move a hand, or feel a heartbeat thump at your ribs. They can point to networks that handle sound, vision, planning, and self-talk. They can even watch resting networks idle into gear when your mind wanders. Yet the simple spark of being aware slips through the net. You can trace pathways and still fail to locate the observer. Push deeper. Where is the point that experience becomes the feeling of I am experiencing? It's like standing on a stage and trying to step behind the spotlight that makes the stage visible. Each step only lights another patch of floor. Awareness keeps being the thing doing the looking. One way to understand this is to treat awareness as a storyteller, not a recording device. The brain does not wait for the world to arrive and then respond. It forecasts the next moment and prepares a best guess about what you'll see, hear, and feel. Sensory input checks those expectations, nudging them into alignment. This process runs fast, so what you call now already carries the imprint of a prediction shaped by mood, memory, and context. The result feels like direct contact with reality, but it's a narrative that forms ahead of the final facts and then updates if needed. Most of the time, the guess lands close enough that it feels seamless. When it misses, you notice the jolt, the odd word you thought you heard, the step you almost missed, the face you misread before your brain corrected. That same process stitches your preferences, opinions, and boundaries into a sense of self. You remember how you handled a tense meeting, how you acted with a friend, how you responded to a small failure. Those moments become raw materials for a running story about who you are. Your neural pathways change with each experience, strengthening habits you repeat and loosening others you neglect. Social feedback feeds into this loop. Praise, skepticism, warmth, distance. The person listening right now is not the person you were a year ago, and not the person you'll be next year. Yet your narrative knits the changes into a single thread. This continuity feels stable even as the content changes, the way a river keeps its name while its water never stays the same. There is a quiet test you can run. Think of a trait you believe you have: patient, quick to laugh, guarded, bold. Ask where you learned that. Often it traces to a handful of vivid moments that stood out, while thousands of other moments slipped by unmarked. What your mind kept, it used to define you. What it let go of never joined the story. In this way, identity can swing on which memories felt worth saving and which predictions about yourself the mind kept confirming. Change the experiences you sample, and the predictions shift. Change the context you live in, and the story takes a new shape without announcing that it has. Altered states make the scaffolding easier to see. With steady attention on the breath or an anchor point in the body, mental chatter can quiet. The sense of being a separate observer sometimes loosens, not from belief, but from direct experience. There's still perception, but the boundary that sorts me from not me softens. A similar widening can happen during awe, standing under a clear night sky or listening to a sound that seems larger than the room. For a few moments, awareness expands beyond habit. The familiar voice that narrates your life moves to the background. It's not that you vanish. It's that the usual edges feel less fixed. When the moment passes, the edges return, but something in you remembers that they can move. That flexibility matters because it shows that consciousness can rearrange its own priorities. The mind can shift which signals it amplifies and which stories it favors. Given time and practice, that shift leaves marks in brain tissue and in behavior. The way you focus changes, your sense of threat or safety changes, your capacity for pause changes. The quiet witness you noticed at the start keeps watching, but the content it watches grows less tangled or, at least, more transparent. You start to catch a thought right as it forms and see the prediction hiding inside it. You notice an emotion as it colors perception and feel the color drain when the emotion passes. Each of those moments is small, but together they add up to a new baseline for how experience is constructed. People sometimes ask whether this makes free will an illusion. If awareness is downstream from countless hidden processes, what room is left for choice? One answer is practical. The feeling of choosing focuses behavior toward goals, encourages reflection, and shapes how we hold ourselves and one another accountable. Even if the origin of choice is complicated, the experience of choosing still guides action. Another answer is experiential. When you pay close attention, you can watch intentions arise, collide, and settle. Some intentions feel strong and sticky, others fade. You can influence which ones gain strength by changing what you feed your mind and where you place attention. The space might be small, yet it exists, and you can work within it. Listen to the tone of your inner narrator for a moment. Is it kind, impatient, amused, neutral? That tone often predicts how the next few hours will feel. If the narrator expects conflict, you may scan for it and find it. If it expects ease, you notice what works and let small errors slide. This is not a trick of positive thinking. It's the mind's prediction engine doing its job. Expectations bend perception, which then returns as evidence for the expectation. Interrupt the loop with a different input, slower breath, a change of scene, a question asked in a gentle way, and the loop recalibrates. Over time, these small pivots become the new default. The sense of self you carry also serves as a tool. It helps you navigate social life, remember obligations, and keep promises across time. But it's still a construction that updates as conditions change. You can use that to your advantage by giving your mind new material. Learn a skill, and the self that couldn't do it becomes the self that can. Spend time with people who hold a better version of you in mind, and your internal narrator starts to speak with their confidence. Let yourself rest, and the exhausted self loses its grip on the mic. None of this requires grand declarations. It's about the steady drift of predictions toward patterns that support the person you're becoming. A final paradox sits at the center of all this. Consciousness feels like the most private, intimate thing you have, and yet it does not appear as a single, solid object you can locate. It functions more like a coordination system, aligning many processes so they present as one. On the surface, that one feels simple. Underneath, it's a stack of signals negotiating every moment. When the stack is well tuned, you glide through your day and call it normal. When it falters, you call it a glitch. Both states reveal the same underlying machinery. So you return to that first small click of noticing. There is experience happening, and there is the sense that it is happening to someone. Whether that someone is fixed or fluid, whether choice is a spark or a swell, the moment is here. You can let the narrative keep doing its work and still rest in the part that watches without adding extra noise. From there, even ordinary seconds feel a little wider, as if awareness had quietly adjusted the focus and pulled more of the world into view.